May you introduce yourself?
My name is Jennifer Cisse. I am from New York, Bronx, and I'm currently living in Belgrade, Serbia.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bronx, East Bronx, and I've lived there basically all my life.
And how it was like growing up in Bronx? Some of your memories and feelings that you remember.
Um, it was there was always something going on growing up, like in the Bronx. I think for anywhere, but like there was always something going on. For me, like in my neighborhood, there's always something going on. Sometimes I miss my neighborhood and like
Yeah.
my friends and just like my just everything that was happening around me, but it was fun for the most part. Yeah, it felt
Did
like
you?
a family.
Yeah. So all people who is from your street, for example, they all friends together, right? They have
Oh,
like
for the
deep
most
connection,
part.
or just
Yeah, for the most part we're all friends because I've lived there for like in the neighborhood that we live in, like that we last moved in. I lived there for more than 15 years, and
Mhm.
like most of my neighbors, they've been living there longer, so it does feel like a family. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes there is maybe a stereotype, but maybe this is a true that in Bronx it's always fighting and shootouts, and police cannot control this area because somebody control
Well,
police in there. So this is true, or this is like a myth. This is like
I guess
stereotype.
it depends on the part of the Bronx you live in, like South Bronx. Actually, I don't want to like put any stereotypes out there for South Bronx, but
Yeah,
I'm gonna for my neighborhood.
yeah.
I live in East Bronx. We have like police. They patrol the neighborhood sometimes because like yeah, there might be fights and like
Mhm.
things going on. I remember some shootouts growing up.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that's for everywhere. Like there's always like something dangerous going on in like certain parts of any country or any city. But it's half stereotype and half truth.
I
Yeah.
get it.
But there are also some safe parts. There are lots of safe parts in New York. Like
Mhm.
lots of safe neighborhoods, yeah.
So it's still like in Bronx. It's just a stereotype then, because it's still in Bronx. People going in the take children to a kindergarten and everything. So it's still safe to live there. Normal life. I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah, I mean yeah, it's not I mean my siblings, for example, like they go to my little brother, my little sister, they go to school by themselves, like they're fine. Just general rules like don't talk to strangers,
Mhm.
keep your belongings close to you, make sure of your surroundings and you'll be fine, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. And what usually people do to survive there?
So work is like number one thing for New Yorkers. Like we have this work culture where it's like always you got to get to the next thing, you got to get to the next job. Like you always got to make money, got to make money
Mhm.
fast, fast, fast. So you always got to make money because everything is super expensive. Um, yeah, that's mainly like the main thing to do, I guess, to survive. Just always be on the next job or like always have a job.
Yeah. And this
Yeah.
is the salary in New York City. And then this is enough, or still it's not enough and you need to pick up a few jobs, for example, to just survive, to stay
Yeah.
living there.
So we just increased our minimum wage to $15 an hour,
Mm-hmm.
but that's still not enough for like example, there are like some single mothers who they have to work like 2, 3 jobs just to be able to pay their rent. They have to put food on the table. They
Mm-hmm.
get government assistance too. But sometimes it's just not enough. Like we have a very interesting wage gap between like the
Mm-hmm.
poor and the rich in New York. So that's where it comes in, like survival in New York is very hard. Because everything is like super expensive. Even when you're working a job like full time, you
Mm-hmm.
still have to like have that second job just to be able to like put food on the table for your family.
Oh, that sounds like difficult. And you're
It
always
is.
busy, like you don't have time for you don't do you have a free time when you work in the two works? 2
When
jobs?
you work in 2 jobs, no. I used to actually work 2 jobs. So I worked at Modell's, which it was like a sporting goods store. And then I also worked as a waitress. And yeah, like you don't really have time. When I was working 2 jobs, I didn't really have time to do anything else. But I was so focused on like working and making money. And I was like so satisfied with like the money I was making that I didn't really care to have a social life. I didn't care to like have time to do anything else. And that's the thing about New York is like I feel like we're so like busy in work that we don't really care about, you know, our social life and our family and stuff. And I realized that actually being here in Serbia, because people like Serbians, I feel like they're like more chilled and laid back about work, and like they seem, in my opinion, I feel like they seem happier. But that's just my opinion from a foreigner's point of view. I don't know if they actually are, but they're not so like crazy about, you know, making money and like always working and, you know, stuff like that. And they seem fine. So
But what was the best part living in Bronx? Still, what was the best part living in New York City?
the best part is the diversity of food. Like I can get food from anywhere in the world that I want. If I want Haitian food one day, I can take a bus 10 minutes, go get Haitian food. If I want Puerto Rican food, I can get Puerto Rican food. If I want Jamaican food, Russian food, Polish food, like we have like so many like different foods because we have so many different cultures and so many different people. So that's probably the best thing.
Do you have experience in living in the other areas of New York City instead of Bronx?
Yes. So when I was in college, when I graduated high school, I went to university in Staten Island. And I lived there for about 2 years on campus in a dorm. And have I lived anywhere else? I lived in Harlem for a very short period of time. But yeah, those are like the only 2 places outside of the Bronx that I've lived in.
But what about colleges and universities in America in general, I think, and in New York City? This is, can you go and study there for free or you need to pay? This is how it works there.
It's not free. Well, if you have a scholarship or something, or if you have like government assistance, they can help you out. But you can't, there's no, I don't think there's any university that's necessarily free, because even for me, like I had a scholarship, but I still had to pay off like the rest of my tuition, and I had to pay because I was living on campus. So no, I don't think there is any free. Maybe if you're making like under the required income, like yearly income, like if you're not making enough, then they'll help you out. Yeah. But no free.
But now you're talking about college or about university?
University.
So living in New York City, you may meet a lot of people, and I think all of them have a different accents. Depends of the area they live in. Can you like tell the accent of Bronx, the area you lived in and growing up in? Some specific maybe words or maybe hands movements, or maybe, you know, in some movie they show when people speak, some of the areas, depends of the area, they use their hands in a different way, like.
Yeah. So for the movies, because like when they show movies from New York, they show like most like mafia movies or like Italian like parts of like the Bronx, and they have really strong accents. That's not just in the Bronx. Like even in Staten Island, there's lots of Italians and their accents are so strong. It's like, yo, I'm walking here, you know, like that type of accent. But I don't think we have that in the Bronx. I don't really think we have an accent. And if you go like to Manhattan or something, like they don't have an accent at all, I think. So I guess it does depend on the part of New York. But in my opinion, Staten Islanders, they have the strongest New York accents ever.
Where?
In Staten Island.
And but in general, for example, in California and in New York City, people speak different. Like, can you hear, for example, when somebody from California came to New York City, can you hear that they from there? Or can people in California, when you travel there, feel that you're from New York?
When I went to Detroit, yeah, they told me I had an accent, but Californians, they do have an accent. Their accent is like, I don't want to say, actually, I don't want to comment on that because I don't want to offend them, but they have like some sort of, how do I say this in a nice way? They have like, like Valley Girl accent, like they
Valley Girl.
have like a really Valley Girl accent, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Okay, there's this YouTuber, his name is Jake Paul.
Yeah.
His persona, like his core personality, his accent, like in my opinion, he'll fit perfectly in California. He just seems like that's how I think. I've never been to California ever, but when I see him, that's how I think of like, that's how I, from my perspective, how I think all Californians are. Yeah.
So this is generally accepted that hip hop was born in Bronx. And may you say from your perspective, this is somehow affect your life and maybe taste of music, or maybe you see a lot of, when you growing up, you see a lot of like street artists and there and musicians that affect somehow your taste of music.
Yeah, of course. So hip hop actually did originate in the Bronx in the 1970s. It's argued, some people say it started in Jamaica, or some people say it started in Brooklyn or started in Queens. That's really not true. It started in the Bronx. It was Clive Campbell. He's I think he's like a rapper or a DJ. And in the 1970s, it was like they were having a summer party or something, and that's how it really originated. And it does have a big influence on the type of music I listen to, because the only music I listen to is hip hop. So that's the only music I listen, the only genre of music I listen to. Yeah. What else did you ask? I'm sorry.
Can you name 3 musicians that you like the most?
Okay. So my favorite group is Tribe Called Quest. They're more 80s, 90s. They're like jazz, hip hop mix. They're really good. I kind of like a Mobb Deep. They're also like another hip hop group. And who else? I'm gonna name. Well, she's not really hip hop, but I like listening to like Beyonce, Rihanna, Nicki Minaj. You know, the mainstream like female artists. Yeah.
What is the most common stereotype about New Yorkers? Did I say it right? New Yorkers? People from New York City is New Yorkers, right?
New Yorkers, yeah.
New Yorkers. What do you think the most common stereotypes about people from New York? And this is true or false?
People say that we're really mean, and people say that we're really loud.
Loud and mean.
Those are like the top 2 that come to mind. So first of all, we're not mean. Okay, so I feel like people who say that we're mean are like tourists. Like when they go to like the city center or something, like when they go to 42nd Street, Times Square, and they need help, and like people aren't helping them or something, because people are always in a rush. It's not really true. Like you can find people that'll help you like anywhere. It's not that we're mean. It's just that we're in a rush, and we can be loud sometimes. So that one is probably not a stereotype. It's actually true. It's always loud.
Loud? What do you mean loud? Like speak loudly, or just like?
We always speak loud. We like listening to music really loud in the mornings. Like in my building, there's always music blasting, like early in the morning. They don't care what time you go to sleep, at nighttime, it's always loud around you. So, and like even in the buses, like here, the buses are really quiet and people aren't really talking that much. But like in New York, like in the trains, first of all, there's like musicians, artists playing music any time of the day, like early in the morning, really late at night. It's always going to be noise around you. So we're just like loud people in general.
But did you miss this part while living in Serbia, did you miss this loud part of your life?
Um,
Like, did you miss
I
music
don't.
in the bus when you quietly driving?
I do kind of miss it actually. Like when I was there, when I was living there and I was actually experiencing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying because they would do it like really early in the morning.
Mhm.
But now it's kind of like I do miss it because it's home. I'm gonna miss home always. But it's also a good thing that I'm not there's it's not always loud in the buses here. It's quiet because I can just like have a peaceful ride to my destination.
That's true.
So it's 50-50.
Okay, so with this, let's jump and talking about relationship. Did you say earlier there that in New York City, people really oriented to like a money oriented and your career oriented? So this is difficult in New York City to get a relationship in general, and how people have a friends and connection, and how people have like a boyfriend and girlfriend, like intimate connection between each other. This is if they don't have time for that, how it's happened. Like there is a lot of lonely hearts in.
Actually, it's the opposite. So when it comes to dating,
Mhm.
I don't think that it's more so that people are so busy.
Mhm.
I think dating is so hard in New York because we have so many people. Like there's so many people in New York, so you can always date. Like you can date so many people at one time. So it's just hard to find someone that's going to be loyal to you or
Yeah.
someone that's only going to be dating you because people in New York is like we feel like dating partners are so disposable. Like if I'm dating someone and they show me like one red flag or they do one thing that I don't like, I can just like stop talking to them and just date the next person because there's so many people. Which it's not what I do. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah, I
It's hard to
understand.
just find someone that just wants to be with you or just wants to like invest their time in you.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And how do you usually, like not you, but people in general, usually meet each other? Like through application, or they meet in like bars or on the street when walking? How did you get this connection? Like, or through some social media? How did you meet all of these people if you're always busy?
You can slide in their DMs.
Uh,
Tinder is very popular. So I think Tinder is like the number one because I
yeah.
was on Tinder. We have so many dating apps. We have Tinder, Bumble. Oh, this is so bad that I know all of these apps because I was on these apps, but whatever.
Yeah.
There's
I think
Tinder,
it's
there's
everywhere.
Bumble.
Everywhere. Tinder is everywhere. Everybody who's lonely using this nowadays.
Yeah, but Tinder is not really like the greatest app to use if you're looking
That's
for
true.
something serious. We also have Hinge. It's like a little bit more of a serious dating app, I guess. Or you can meet people like in the streets. Like sometimes guys will just come talk to you if you're
Yeah.
having coffee at like Starbucks or something, or a friend of a friend knows someone or someone you grew up with. Like, yeah.
And in general, what would you say? I know that all these individuals, and you cannot like blame people for to make them to explain them in the specific way because everyone is different. But still, I think that the area where you was born in and growing up, it somehow affect your beliefs and your actions and how you react and how you deal and what you believe in. So what can you tell about guys from New York City?
New York, oh my gosh, guys from New York, I'm sorry, but actually, let me not say I hate them. It's just hard to date them because like I told you, like in the dating pool, everybody's so disposable that they don't really take you seriously.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to like be in a serious relationship with someone, especially if the guy is in his 20s
Yeah.
or like mid 20s or something, which is like the age pool that I usually date. I don't feel like that they're family oriented. I can only think of like two guys in New York that I dated my entire life that like were family oriented or we talked about like some like serious things.
Mhm.
Um, they're not loyal. Like from my experience and from my perspective, they're not loyal. They can't stay with one girl. it's just a big city with so many people, so they just do whatever.
But for example, did they agree for this? Like, okay, we are together, but let's have a like free relationship. Not like free, how to say, like open relationship when we can meet somebody else. Did you tell it before? Like, let's like hang out together, but we still have see somebody else, or this is just like bad dishonesty when you together and you didn't agree for open relationship and they still meet somebody else.
Oh yeah. So I have 2 experiences with that. I was dating this guy. And we were dating just him and I. It was a close relationship, but we were dating exclusively. And like about 2 months into us dating, he just started telling me that like, oh, I think I want like something more open. And it was so surprising to me because like I never got that sign from him. So he wanted to be in an open relationship, which was not a good thing. Or sometimes you'll be dating someone and they'll be dating other people. They just won't tell you. You just have to find out on your own. That happened to me too. So it's very
terrible.
hard.
It's not good. I mean, this is okay if both people like want to have open relationship. It's your choice if you agree. But when it's like when somebody do it from your back, it's bad.
It's cheating, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. But just don't date guys from New York. Stop. I'm just kidding.
Never date a guy in New York? Guy.
Yeah.
Guide. Okay, I'm not gonna date a guide. But then how did you get somebody? For example, you never travel away from New York City and you're gonna live in there all your life. How people get married and everything if they always on this, always on the go with a dating other people? What age usually people in New York City get married and get like family? I think late, because if you're always on the go, then when you have time for marriage.
Yeah, marriage is not really a big priority for us. Like, well, for most of us. So I have a best friend. My best friend is 22. She's married, but that's because like she's really religious. So I guess it depends on the background that they come from, like the family they come from. She comes from a very religious family, a very cultural family. And she got married. So, but then I have other friends who never want to get married. They just want to have fun. They want to live their life. They want to make money. They want to be settled. Yeah, for the most part, it's probably like mid-30s to early 30s to like mid-30s for women. I don't know for men how old it would be, but marriage is not a priority. And even if it was, like we have such a high divorce rate. So, I mean, just be careful when it comes to marriage. But I feel like I'm not ready. I'm 22.
Yeah.
So, but then you have families who like encourage their daughters to graduate school and like have their dream job before they get married and like focus on their own livelihood and focus on, accomplishing their goals before they get married. Because once you get married, I feel like that, well, in my opinion, I want to be married in the future. So I'm not saying marriage is a bad thing, but it does kind of like when you get married at a certain age, it kind of like slows down everything else you want to do.
Yeah.
Like I said, it just depends on the family like that you grew up in. Some families will encourage their kids to do whatever they want in terms of marriage, and then some families really want their kids, especially their daughters, to get married as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's true. It's all about environment you grow up in. No, but it's also all about your personality. Like even if somebody even if my, for example, like grandfather or somebody, I'm not talking about me, by the way. I'm not talking about me. They never tell me to get married. But in general, if somebody will tell, for example, get married, and if you don't want and you have different, more open-minded and different mindset, so you're not gonna do it just. So it's not gonna affect your life.
There are people from really cultural families, like and they grew up in New York, but their families are really like strong. Their culture, they're really religious, and they still go ahead and like do whatever they want in terms of marriage. Like even though their family tells them, "Oh, you should get married," I think like for me, like my family, they wanted me to get married and stuff, because my mom got married to my dad. My mom had me when she was 19. Her and my dad got married when she was 18. So, and I'm 22. I'm still not married. So they probably see that as like a really bad thing. But also it's because like I'm from New York, and that's not really something that is pushed on us to like, it's not something that's the norm in our culture to like get married like super soon, and like you have to have kids at a certain age, and you have to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does depend on the person. Yeah. And if the person is like religious, or if their personal beliefs. Yeah.
So now you will tell me your confession. It's maybe true or it's maybe false. It's one story. It's maybe scary story, dating story, story from your life, whatever. You can make it up. You can tell the true story, and then you will just tell me the confession. One confession about this story, and then I will ask you some question about this, and then I will decide whether you lie, whether I think you lie, or this is a true story about you.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me think. Okay, so I used to work, I think I mentioned this before, I worked in Modell's in Manhattan. It was on Chambers Street, and I live in the Bronx, which is like really far. I have to take a train home like every night. So one time when I was going home from work and I was getting off the train at my stop, there was a guy standing like at the entrance of the train, like when you're getting out. And he he followed me a few blocks down to my neighborhood. It was nobody outside. It was really dark. It was really late. He just came up to me and told me like, take off my sneakers, like to take my shoes off and give it to him. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was so scared. I didn't think he was serious, because that happens in New York sometimes, like with crazy people, they come up to you and they just tell you random stuff. Like, so I didn't think he was serious. I was like, are you serious, bro? And he was like, yeah, take your sneakers off or give them to me. And like, I kind of got scared. So I just like I took my shoes off and I gave it to him. And I was like only 2 blocks away from home. So I just like walked home. And when I came home, my dad was there. He's waiting. He was like, where are your shoes? And I was like, somebody just stole them from me. And it was like kind of like a normal thing, I guess. Like my dad wasn't too worried or anything. He was just like, oh, wow, okay. Because like something like that happens to my dad too, but with his car, like somebody stole his car tires.
Car?
No, somebody stole his car tires. Yeah. That's.
But how this man looks like?
I remember his face exactly. I don't know if I should say. I mean, the details of his face. He was really tall. He had a shaved beard. He kind of seemed like he was in his mid-40s, and I'm pretty sure that he was on drugs. He has to be on drugs. Yeah. But yeah.
Maybe he wanted like do a present for his girlfriend. New pair of sneakers.
Yeah, I don't know what they weren't like special sneakers either. They were just some Nikes. They weren't special at all. But he got my, I don't even know if they fit him. He was so much taller than me. He was so much bigger than me. But he got some free sneakers that day. So
I think you're telling the truth.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, because I can believe it. You tell it. But it's crazy. But you know what? There is a drug problem in New York in general.
Yeah, especially in Staten Island, they have like a major issue with drugs. They have a drug epidemic over there. We have a drug issue too in the Bronx, but I don't think it's as bad as it is in Staten Island at all.
So this island is the most dangerous area, you think, in the whole New York, right?
I don't think it's the most dangerous. I just think it's the most forgotten about. Like it's a part of New York, but nobody really cares. Nobody really talks about it. Nobody really mentions it like it's a part of New York. It's just kind of like, like nobody cares about Staten Island. I don't know why. They don't really get government help, I guess, as much as we do in like the more popular boroughs.
Mhm.
They probably have the biggest drug issue, for sure.
That's scary.
There's actually a crack house like across my building. It's not a crack house, but like there's like lots of like people who do crack that like live there. Yeah, and there's this one old lady that she's so sweet, but like you can tell that she's on drugs.
Yeah. But this
You
is
can tell that
this is possible to do it, like it's legal. It's not
it's not legal.
It's not legal.
It's not. We
anywhere.
just legalized marijuana actually
Yeah.
this year. So it's not legal. And I don't think it should be legal, but we
Yeah.
have some politicians that are fighting for all drugs to just be legalized,
Mhm.
which is really strange to me because we have such a huge drug problem and it's so normalized in my neighborhood. Like we see her every day and like clearly she's on drugs and nobody like really does anything to help her. I feel so bad for her. And we have police officers like that come like that patrol our neighborhood all the time. I'm sure they know about this place, but they don't really seem to care much about it. I don't know why.
Yeah, this is the problem in there.
Yeah, I grew up seeing a lot of interesting things. Like even like prostitution was normal in my building. Actually, there was a guy. I think he had like a prostitute where he would take money from her. Like he was like her manager, I guess.
Yeah.
And one time I was coming from school, I was walking upstairs and I saw her. She was like shaking. She was so cold. She had on this really short dress and like these really long heels. And one time, because I talked to him sometimes and I told him like, oh my gosh, like I saw she was so hungry one night. And he was like, oh no, she's not hungry. Like she's well taken care of. Like I take care of her. Like he was like feeling defensive. But I wasn't saying anything bad. I was just telling him how I saw her. She was really hungry. She seemed like so hungry. She was eating a sandwich and she was like, I felt so bad for her. And I'm pretty sure she was also on drugs too. But yeah.
But this is still like when it was like 10 years ago.
It was definitely worse years and years ago. It's better now. It's way better now. You don't see the prostitution stuff anymore. Now you just see people like on drugs. But back then, like it was people getting, I don't want to paint the Bronx in a bad light because it's really not a bad place.
Yeah.
You just have to be cautious, right? Of course, years ago, it was like really worse, especially with drugs.
Yeah.
It's not a bad place. It's just you have to like just be safe and make sure that you're, not just like walking anywhere like willy-nilly. You know what I mean?
Not walk anywhere at night.
Probably, yeah.
Stay home. Stay safe.
In certain neighborhoods, yeah, you might as well just stay home at night. As sad as it sounds. At least we never went through like school shootings, and that doesn't happen in New York. We're really good with that. Like in my middle school, we had like metal detectors. So before you went in school, like they would check your book bag if you had any knives or any weapons and stuff. We make really sure, like, because 9/11. So I think that's probably why, because we're like really hands-on, or like we're really on top of stuff like that, like shootings in schools. We have like school officers and school patrol officers and stuff like that. So we're fine with that. We don't have to like worry about that in New York, at least.
But in general in America, it's everywhere in schools, it's safe, right? Everywhere, like police, like you say, or only in New York? In the other
I'm speaking for New York, but I guess in other states, like in the country, like maybe Texas, like the southern states, maybe it's a little, I don't know. I don't want to speak for the other states because I've never lived there. I've never even been there.
Yeah, I get it.
Off of what I've read. But yeah, I think for the most part, excuse me, for the most part, I feel like schools in New York are more safer. In my opinion.
So now I will ask you 3 random questions. You just will answer it. I will ask you a very short questions and you can answer it short or long, however you like, okay? So my first question is, name the best piece of advice you have ever received.
Oh my God, that's a really hard question. Wow, this is definitely gonna be from my dad because my dad is always giving me advice about something every time. Um, he's giving me a lot of advice, but I think the one that I really appreciate, or one that I didn't listen to him at the time, and now I kind of look back and regret some decisions that I've made, is to not grow up so fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's like ever since I was 16, like I've always wanted to, so weird, but I've always just wanted to be an adult and kind of like do my own thing and like have my
Mm-hmm.
own responsibilities and pay my own. Like I just thought it was easy, but it's not. And my
Yeah.
dad will always tell me to like just slow down, take your time, be a kid, appreciate life, and yeah, I think that's one of the advice that I regret not taking at the time. And it was a good piece of advice.
It was a good piece of advice, really. I remember sometimes that I hear it from someone too, because I remember it in my head. Like, you don't want to grow up. Don't do it. Like, no, take your time, enjoy, and then
I
you
went
don't understand. But in the time now, looking back to that times, I still like listening some music that I were listening back then. That time, I feel such a nostalgia. Like I feel this sadness. I understand now.
Trust me, girl, I know how you feel. I wish I could be 16 again or 15 again. When I was 16, I really wanted to, I don't know why, but I had this thing. I really wanted to be an adult. It
Mhm.
was so weird. I just wanted to grow up. And now that I'm 22, I feel like I wish I was 15 again or 16 again.
Our next question is: what value is the most meaningful to you? For example, love, friendship, money, honesty, honor. What is the most meaningful?
I'm a person that really likes to have friends, and I like to have family, and I like to be around people. I'm a people person. So
Mhm.
I would probably say love, family, friendship,
So all
because
relationship and connection between
yes, I
people.
think those are the most important. It's always good and it's always important to have people around.
I get it. And our last question is, our final question is: unique or typical?
I'll say typical. I don't think anyone is necessarily special, or
Mhm.
I don't think anyone is necessarily, I don't want to say nobody stands out, but like you mentioned before, like we all kind of strive for that same end goal.
Mhm.
Like we all have that same desire. We all want to be happy.
Mhm.
We all want to have money. We all want to be successful in life. So yeah, I think we're all one.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for being the guest, the first guest of our podcast, of my podcast, our podcast.